We're back to learning CSS. Let us talk a little bit about colors. In its basic form, we can add colors as a text color, a background color, or a border color. To have that visible, we'll need some elements. Let me add an H1 and a paragraph. And you can already see the default colors. By default, you have a black text color, no background color, and no border color. And now we could, for example, select the H1 and add a background color by using the background minus color property. We'll set it to green. Same goes for the paragraph, but in this case we'll add green not to the background but to the text by using the color property. As I've said, we have a border color as well. To show this, I'll add a third element, another paragraph, and I give this a class of border. And now we'll select the border in our CSS by using dot border. I will set the border to 2 pixels, solid and green. 2 pixels is the width, solid is the border style, because you could, for example, also make it dashed, and green is the color. Besides using these colors in these 3 different ways, you can also see that for some reason the browser understands what we mean by using the word green. So there are some colors inbuilt in browsers. You could call them the usual suspects, so green, yellow, black, white, blue. All of that is understood by the browser and given a specific color value. And it's actually currently around 140 colors that usual browsers can read, just by name only. And I'm going to link to this resource page where you can find them. It's not just the simple ones, so yellow, green. Also names for colors that I haven't heard. For example, Alice blue or blanched almond. I'm pretty sure you haven't heard that either, if you haven't actually used it specifically somewhere in coding. And we can type that in. Let's just use darker blue for the background color of the H1. I'll make the color now white for our text to have it of higher contrast, which improves the readability. Let me change the background color for the body, and I'll make this tomato, which is also understood by the browser directly. Now let me get rid of the background color for paragraphs. And I'll make the border maybe aquamarine. everything works, but you can also see that there is this longer series of letters and numbers, and there's a hex code. So all of these names for colors, they also have a hex code, and the hex code goes from 0 to 16, you could say, so from 0 to 9, which is 10, and then 6 letters A, B, C, D, E, F. So it has 16 values per character, and if we change the border, for example, to the hex code for aquamarine, nothing changes, as this is the same. The browser understands that the hex code is aquamarine, and aquamarine is this hex code, and then this specific color is used. I'm also going to link to this resource where you can find the hex codes. 2 hex codes that are easily memorizable are for black and white. White is always FF, 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 and black is always 00, 00, 00. Let me scroll down here, and there is white, so you can see 6 times F. There are more ways to write colors. One that you may have heard is RGB for red, green, blue. It has values from 0 to 255, so 256 values for each color. And if I add this here, you can see the browser can read that as well. So this would more like a reddish tomato color with 255, 99, 71. And here if I use these sliders, it is shown in real time what the color looks like when all of these are blends. For example, here a mint green, 75, 175, 136. Yet another way to write these colors is RGBA, and this is simply a minor adjustment of the RGB. In this case, RGB still stands for red, green, blue, and A is the alpha channel. If you've used GIMP before, you can add alpha channels to objects, and this gives them an opacity or a transparency, and you can see the alpha channel as that. By default, the value is set to 1, which makes it fully visible. So if I add a 1 here, nothing changes. And 0 is the lowest, which makes it invisible. And in between you can set the opacity here, 0.5 for example. There's the middle ground, 0.75, and so forth. So it's, I think, easily understandable. The alpha channel A is simply there to adjust the opacity of the red, green, and blue color mix. As I've said, here we have our hex values, and yet again it uses red, green, blue, and the first 2 characters stand for the red color, middle for the green, and the last 2 for the blue color channel. So it always goes back to red, green, and blue, and it creates this color mix. A final way to write colors is HSL, hue, saturation, lightness, something that you may also have seen in GIMP or Photoshop. This uses percentages for the last 2 parameters. So if we make maybe our background color here Dodger blue into HSL, let us add 0 for the hue, and then 53% for saturation, 54 for lightness. And this gives us the color that you've seen in the swatch. For the most part, you want to use for simple colors these name codes. Everyone knows what yellow and red is, and even though Dodger blue might be new to you, you have an idea of what it could look like due to the fact that blue is in that name. So use these names when you can, because it makes the code easier to read. But if you have a specific color in mind, using hex codes, so hashtag and then these 6 characters, this might be the way to go. At least that's common to use that. RGB and especially HSL isn't that common, but you can see you could use that as well as browser understand how to read that. And that's all that I wanted to cover in this introduction to using colors in CSS. I hope this video was helpful, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.